All right, so a few months ago, we put out a survey. Essentially, we asked a bunch of questions, and many of you responded. So some people were asking questions, like, what's up with this survey? Are we ever going to hear anything about it? Our lead team wisely said, well, if people responded, they probably want to kind of chat about it someday, right? So we thought this would be a great time to do it. So today, we get to walk through, not all of it, of course. There was a lot of information, really fun. If you want some entertaining reading, let us know. We'll forward it to you sometime. But it would take too long. But some of the feedback that we got from our community, which was really good. If you're wondering why we did this, here's why we did this. We wanted to get a bit of a pulse on what our community was thinking and feeling these days. We felt that at least some people were eager to share thoughts. So if we hear that some people are eager to share thoughts, it means that there's probably more than some people that are eager to share thoughts. And so we thought this is a wonderful way to give permission for that. Obviously, feedback is healthy. Anytime you hear any kind of feedback in any kind of setting, family, relationship, marriage, church, work, whatever the case may be, it's good. Listen to it. And also, how can we move forward without taking a bit of an inventory first, right? These days, as we've kind of, moved on and become like a church community, and we've been hanging around here for 12 plus years. And we really want to move forward and continue to become the community that God wants us to be, calling us to be. So we're going to look at some of this stuff. In our lead team meeting, I'm not sure if it was Steph or somebody else said, well, we're going to show the charts, right? People really want to see charts. I'm like, oh, sure, we'll show a bunch of charts. So we're going to start with charts, folks. We're going to start with charts. So basically, we're going to look at some charts really quickly, look at some feedback, and then we created 4 questions to kind of sift or filter through the information that came through. So hopefully, out of the questions, you get an idea for some of the stuff that we learned. So for charts, first of all, this was the most simple way to collect data. So we learned that we are a young church. That's very good. But we'd also like to move towards connecting with like even younger than we are. So young, probably like 30 to 40s is our average, which is good if you compare it to like obviously some mainline churches that their average age might be 73. We are very young, right? But then I also think like, oh, that's interesting. We'd love to see way more young adults in our church community. We think that it's a safe place for them, people from Durham College or people that are living in this neighborhood. So that came up. And also, even though we are generally young, we love like what it means to be a multi-generational space, because that's where we learn and that's how you rub shoulders with different people. Lots of married people as well. We learned that, which is good, but why don't we have more singles? We should have more single people here, right? So that was interesting. Most people have come here because a friend invited them, 70%, and some through their own investigation online, which is awesome. So we should be able to keep growing through inviting friends, because somebody showed up. 70% of us showed up because someone asked them. But we also know that we should continue to pursue some online stuff as well. People have been with us a long time. That's a good sign, really good sign. But then when you think about that, you're like, wow, that's a high percentage of people. That's cool that people stick around. For instance, stats for church plants say that within the first 3 years, everyone that started the church is not there. We've totally bucked that trend. So that's kind of been cool. We're 12 years old. And so, but understanding that there's been people here a long time, how do we balance that off? Because we'd love to see that people have only been here for 6 to 12 months, which means they've just been hanging out with us for a bit, right? So that's fascinating information. We did discover that 10:30 is our preferred start time. So it just happened. So if you want to go earlier, I'm so sorry. But that's kind of where we could probably move it back a bit if young parents think that would be a good idea. Worship style, 3/4 of us really love the style that we have and what we do. That's a good sign. Big table, 70% love it, 10% want it longer, 10% want it shorter. I think 10%, something like that, which I find that fascinating. So, which means most people love what we do, because some churches maybe every few months do some kind of lunch or do something like that. Like we just smack right in the middle of our gathering. We're like, we are going to force people to talk and hang out, because people show up late, people leave early, and so we'll talk about this a little bit more in a second. Gathering frequency, 65% love it as is, 10% say we want it every week. By saying that, they're maybe saying that We take a break on long weekends, we pause in August and do some different kind of unique gatherings. So maybe 10% of people are like, I wish it was open every week of the year. So we'll talk about that in a second and what that looks like. We asked about kids classes. Do you like where we let the kids out? And a third said yes, a third said keep them longer, a third said I don't have kids, it doesn't bother me. So that was that. Giving was a fascinating thing to ask. 40% of us give monthly. 20% of us tithe. So if someone responded to that, in their minds they say they give away 10% of their income, and they possibly give 10% of their income to the local church. And then 12.5% are occasional givers. 4% don't give at all. So you kind of see that thing. And so obviously, in a nonprofit church setting, we'd love to see that 40 and 20 go up a little bit, but we'll talk about that as well. Volunteers, we have a lot of people here volunteer. 70% are involved in a lot of places. 12.5 volunteer a little bit, so that's a high percentage. And yet we still ask for volunteers, right? You're like, wait a second, what's going on here? Well, we are a volunteer-intensive organization. We asked this question in charts. What do you call yourself? You call yourself A, and 60% said, I call myself a Jesus follower. 12% said, I'm questioning a lot of things. That really wasn't the answer, but that's what they said. And then 12% said, I'm new or figuring it out. And I kind of love that balance, right? Because in any church community, you'd hope that a majority of the people are like, yeah, I really love Jesus. I want to follow him. This is wonderful. And you hope that there's a bunch of people in your crowd that are having questions and asking stuff. We're going to deal with that as well. And then attendance. 50% of people said they attend weekly. 25% said whenever I get there. 15% said twice a month. I love the whenever I get there, so that's great. And you should know, and I'll say this again in a few minutes, but general attendance stats for churches all across North America, the average attendance is twice a month. That's what they say. And so I was in a conference last year listening to a pastor that leads a church of like 3,000 people. And he said, it's so hard. I know that some people come once a month and they just heard like 1/4 of this series. It's so hard. That's what he said. I'm like, oh, wow, that's a big church. You do the same thing. That's cool. Nice. That kind of makes you feel good in a weird way. Yeah, I guess so. So those were the charts. We just thought we'd kind of burn through them quickly. And then just some feedback. Here's some quotes. I come for the friendships and the warm community. It's what keeps me coming back. I really appreciate the church asks for feedback. It makes me feel heard and valued. I first came because a friend invited me. I hope we can work on getting more people involved. I appreciate when the church speaks about inclusivity, shows that we are a safe place for everyone. I think more communication about how to get involved would help. It's hard to know where to start. Sometimes I'm not sure about my faith, and I wish there were more opportunities to talk openly about these struggles. And the last one, I think we should fire Jonathan and get a real pastor. Sorry, did that get in there? Oh, it did get in there. Okay, great. Come on, I'm like, I gotta throw something in just to, yeah. So whoever wrote that, Q&A, yeah. No, Sean's told me that in person, so it's okay. We're good. Some of the feedback, like for teaching, there was a lot of positive stuff in regards to that, and also some questions. Like somebody said, why do we have to always be in the Old Testament? I'm like, no, we actually did an Old Testament series to balance all the times we're in the New Testament. So I thought that's kind of clever. But it's an opinion. It's great. Some people say, I want it to be more fun. Someone said less biblical, more application. Someone said more biblical, less application, right? So you're going to hear those things, and I think that's a good thing. I just want to kind of jump ahead here. We'll say it later. In regards to our worship and music, a lot of positive feedback. I think our team's amazing. I love how we've come together. We cheer each other on. I love that whoever's on any given week, we just work together so well. Sometimes we could be a little bit softer, perhaps. We have to maybe do that, but there was some feedback on that. And when in reference to like our kids being with us for a bit of our gathering, I think it's really important that we give our kids an example of healthy and honest and authentic worship. So that's why we keep them for a few songs. And I think that good things happen in authentic moments when we are reflective, when we're praying, when we spend time worshiping together as a community. So that's there. So basically, we asked ourselves 4 questions. and then we funneled kind of the responses through these questions. So the first question we asked ourselves was, and so what we'll do is, because we started on time, at the end of each little section, so there's 4, we'll just open up the questions. If someone who wants to ask a question, this way it's right in your mind and you're not thinking about it at the end, all right? So the first question was a simple question. What cannot or shouldn't change about the Village? We're just like, well, we're getting all this feedback. What are some of the things that shouldn't change? And so we felt like the format of our gathering works. From the feedback, the high percentage of like when the kids go out or worship or how long the teaching is or different things like that, it felt like the format to our gathering should stay the same. We feel like our approach to worship is a really healthy, balanced approach. I don't know if you know this, but we tell our team this quite often, that we don't want, if the first thing that someone says when they leave church or the Village on a Sunday morning is that the music was amazing, we probably bombed the morning. That's not because we want to be a bad music team. It's because we think that there should be something that's more overwhelmingly impressive on your heart. Someone spoke to you. You had a meaningful conversation. Some conversation around the coffee was good. You learned something. You got to ask a question. Oh, and by the way, the music was awesome. Like, we think it should be, but we also love our team and all that stuff. Why the kids going out after 2 songs has been really good. It doesn't add too much to our volunteers, but it kind of gives us a nice pause and a break. I know it's a little chaotic. There was some comments about that, like it's a bit of a chaos. But they're kids, and that's fun. But the cool thing, what happens is that our kids get to experience the worship and the music, and then those that stay for that last song get to have a bit, like maybe a bit more quiet time. And that's been, like right from the first week we introduced that, that's been really, really healthy and good. We think Big Table is going to stay for a while. That big table at the back, we appreciate those that bring food to, like on days like this, like Lori did, and like Janine brings milk every week, and like the team that does that, it's so good. And then I know that sometimes people feel bad for me because they think I want people to come back to their seats. My favorite time of Sunday is getting people back to their seats and them giving me a hard time. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So don't ever feel bad for me. I mean, unless it's 11:40, then you're like, okay, you can feel bad for me. People said like the length of our teaching, not content, length of our teaching is good. And I think in comparison, yeah, like we try and be like 25 minutes or so and leave some room for Q&A. Our alternate August schedule, I think, is going to stay because it gives our volunteers a break. It reminds us that there's other ways that we can gather, and we want to encourage that. And it is the least attended month of the year for all churches. And we have considered relooking at our long weekend format. So we like giving our volunteers a break. It feels like a nice pause, but then there are some people that are like, I have nothing to do, right? So we're just considering maybe creating that into a more of a family 1-hour gathering that maybe is like an all-together thing that people feel like, hey, this was cool, but very different than all our other weeks, you know? So that is on the back burner, and I thought I'd say that. So that was the first question that we siphoned through. So these are things we shouldn't change. Anybody want to say something, comment, question? Yeah. Any other comments, questions about that? There'll be more on other questions, but anything? Anybody? No? Okay. You guys are end of talk Q&A kind of people? All right. Seems like we've programmed it into pretty good. The second question, and of course you can bring something up later at the end as well, is like attendance and giving patterns. So when it comes to attendance, so we have a secret counter now in our gathering that counts every week. I'm not going to say who he is. Oh, he, stink. Okay, now you know the gender. But the point is that we've kind of been averaging about 60-ish on a Sunday, which means that we have to do a bit more of a clear count, but we're probably around 100 people in total, because if people come twice a month or whenever they can, right, then that's kind of been our average. And sometimes you think that's small. There are smaller churches, there are bigger churches. I was at a pastor's retreat this week chatting with a church community pastor from like the Beaches area, and they've been around as long as us, and they did a total count of 60, and they are a reliable, like really great church community. So there's a lot of good church communities between 50 to 100 people. Just thought I'd say that. But if twice a month is the average, like how can we see the folks that are like 1 in 5 a little more maybe? And sorry, when I say that and I look, I'm not making any, but that's like a thoughtfulness, right? Because here's why I think that. I think about like, if you are a parent with young kids, I actually think about this in the back of my mind often on Sundays. I'm like, those kids didn't see each other today. So they missed a bit of an opportunity to be together. And not just on an adult level, but I think about the whole family. So how can we see that? And is 2 times a month going to be like a forever thing? Could it be like at least 2 times a month? Like, I don't know, but that's just something out there. So how do we address something like that? Well, things that we thought about, and I was thinking about too, was, well, we continue to be community. So here's something that we say often, but I don't know if it happens as much as we like, that we actually reach out to people when we miss them, right? We think it, right? You're like, I haven't seen that person I feel like it's been 4 weeks, right? And then the thought goes, and then nothing's done about it. So if you think it, and if you have a healthy, loving kind of, not concern, but like, I missed them, I really wish they were here, just send them a text. Or if you are a phone call person, call them. You're probably not, so send them a text. And I think it's good because, they won't know that you missed them unless you tell them. So being community happens in the most simplest ways. Sometimes we think it's rocket science, but this is one of the most simple ways. The other ways is one of our last kind of little AGM moments that we had, I don't know if it was this one or the mini one we had in the fall, but the question was like, we should know when's a good Sunday to invite friends. I'm like, well, last time I checked, it's pretty safe most Sundays to invite a friend. Like, we're not going to say anything that's going to freak anybody out. We have I think, a safe community. And so, if there's a friend that you've been chatting with about church or about whatever, like, feel free to invite them. It was funny. I was at a cafe. That sounds so abnormal of me. But I was at a cafe, one that I don't go to often. And one of my son's friends was the barista behind the counter. And he started asking me about music and this and church and a whole bunch of stuff. And my daughter said, well, did you invite him to the church for Easter? I'm like, I didn't invite him. She's like, well, that was dumb, Dad. Like, you were having a great conversation. He might have come. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. And I mean, and normally I think about these things sometimes. I have invited many people to church, but in that moment I missed it. So like, just invite someone if there's a comfort level there. And I think we need to keep bettering ourselves in all areas so we give people like good reasons not to miss, right? So, I just don't want to miss a week. So think about that. I think the things we can get better at is like everything we love about us, plus, expanding our missional impact, expanding our community impact, being even more welcoming than we already are. One team that I think we need to like build up here is like a consistent greeting team. I know that sounds simple, but it's like, I don't know if you came in Easter Sunday morning and Jordan, who's not here today, gave you like the biggest welcome in the world. Like this guy should be like greeter every 2 weeks at least, right? Because it was so loving and beautiful. So those are some things I think that will help that. So that's attendance. But how about giving? Giving patterns are interesting. So we know from our AGMs that our giving has taken a hit the last 3 years. At one point, we were getting close to like $180,000 budget. This is pre-COVID. And then last year we were as low as 130. And that's kind of a big difference, right? So we noticed that's there. Talking about money, we've found out doesn't really seem to work. Like by saying like, hey, we're having a tough time. It doesn't work, right? And that's okay. This is not a slight. That's just like something we learned. We're still going to teach on giving and generosity. Generosity is something we need to practice, and it's so important. But like kind of the ongoing conversation about it's like, you know what, we're just going to kind of talk about it in a normal way and never make it like a big deal. Unless we're about to close the week after, then we'll let you know. But what we think will help our giving is simple, like focus on mission, continue to focus on our values, continue to be people who share good news and are good news people, and continue to kind of be that. And we think that'll kind of filter into giving. Of course, we can also give more and we can also grow more, but those are some ways that we've been talking about. And we got to know that like finances and resources really does affect so many things, because we can do lots of things well, but then without resources, we're not going to survive, right? That's just the way it is. And I think we have like just a wonderful church community. And I think the more we resource it, the better we can be, the more we can do. And when I think more, I think like, I don't want to worry about like funding our kids' ministry. I want to think like, no, what do they need? Let's just do this, right? When it comes to missional stuff in our community, when it comes to like a student thing or a youth event, I want to just think, wait, they need money for this? We have the money, we can do that. Or future staffing if there's ever an opportunity, or space. Like what if, we didn't experience this in the DDSB in Durham, but in Toronto, one year, the Toronto District School Board literally tripled rent. If the DDSB tripled our rent, I mean, we'd still meet, but I'd have another 2 jobs. That's basically what would happen, because that's the difference. So those things. And then volunteer appreciation. We're actually planning an event in June for our volunteers. And I want to do it just as well as we possibly can, but then I hate thinking like, do we have enough money to do it as well as we want to do it? I hate that thought, right? So that's just the thing about resources. Now, we've always had this kind of goal, and we were moving towards that. And then we've kind of hit pause, and I think it's still a good goal to have, is to get to 200 and 200. So 200 people total that call the village their home, and $200,000 budget. That'd be pretty cool. I think that'd be amazing. So something to pray about. Any questions about attendance and giving patterns? Anything? Well, yes, and that's a missional thing. So this is interesting that you bring that up, because like I think when last year we changed a little bit of our approach towards mission giving, and said whatever we bring in, we're going to give. We can't, like, we want to be a church that actually says we're going to give $20,000 away, but then we're realizing, we might be really short. How's this going to work? So we said, no. We want to give this much away, and when this much comes in, we're going to give that much away. So it worked. Yes, we did give Water Ambassador money last year because people gave towards it. But Ron would share this opinion as well. The thing is, like, sometimes that's great, and again, running for home. We're going to take money in, we're going to give it out, right? But we are an ongoing weekly church community that needs a certain amount of money to run as well. So it's great that we're giving their opportunity $5,000 and Daughter Project $5,000. Like, it's a wonderful thing. But then for us, we're like, but we also want to increase some of the stuff that we do here, right? And no one's running for us. So we need to kind of think about that as well, just as a church community. And sometimes people think so much about mission, and we want to be that. Listen, we want a high percentage of our church income or operating budget to go towards missional events. But like the whole thing has to all work together. Yeah. So I don't know, that kind of answered your question and also added a little bit more. So back to Ron. Ron has a great idea just to talk about, like, every month, this is what we're trying to raise for the whole year. And then we slowly inch towards that amount. So after Victoria Day weekend, expect to see a slide. All right? Yeah. Yeah, another slide. Okay, let's keep going, and you can ask questions at the end. Another question that we filtered through was people having doubts and questions and honest faith crisis stuff. So as you saw from the chart, there's many people in our community who are walking through some faith deconstruction and are very open to share that they have questions these days. And we think that's a really good thing, because we think we're a safe space. So if you're sharing that we feel good about that. Now, we think it's true for a few reasons why our community draws this. We've had Q&A, or now we call it Q&R, because we don't always have an answer, but we will have a response. So since we've started, we've always been open to questions. Some people that know that my 3 questions at the end of a teaching are, any questions, any comments, did you disagree with anything? They're like, you ask if someone disagreed with you? I'm like, yeah, I know my friends. Somebody's disagreeing with me on something. But because we ask those questions, it encourages people to be like, wait, I have this question, and I think I want to ask it, or I want to think about it. So that's one thing. Lots of churches would never, again, open up to questions at the end of a teaching. I want to share a little bit about the church denomination we're with, BIC, Being Christ Canada. We are an Anabaptist church, which means this. We focus on things like simplicity, on peace, on Jesus being the center of our teaching, like he's the focus in the lens. Other things can be blurry, but Jesus has to be focused. I love that. But here's one of my favorite things about Anabaptist history and tradition. We believe in something called community hermeneutic. which simply means that we come to the Bible together. And we all bring something to our understanding of Scripture. It means that when we walk away after somebody like me is taught, it's not like and God bless our charismatic friends, but it's not like in that setting where it's like, this is what God said, this is what you're going to do, shut up, leave, and do it, right? Sorry, that's a bad, but that's what some people feel like, right? In this setting, when someone like me teaches, it's amazing because then somebody says something like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that side of it. This is amazing. Thank you for saying that out loud. And then we collectively walk away and feel like we've understood the Scripture story better. Well, that leads also to more questions because people are going to feel comfortable to ask questions. And we are also in a season of much deconstruction for good reason and many questions when it comes to Christianity. You might remember this series we did a bunch of years ago, not that many, just a couple. We said that the reason that this is happening is politics, pandemic, and scandal. So politics just blew up in the world and people started attaching their faith to politics more than normal. Pandemic obviously caused a bunch of things, divided lines, and then scandal, church scandals. That happens too. People are like, what? What's going on here? Right? And so this caused questions. But it's normal to question some things as somebody's growing in their faith. That's what happens. If your kid, as they're growing up, doesn't ask you more questions as they get older, you're like, what's going on? You have no questions for me? You got it all figured out? Right? So that's, I think it's a healthy thing. And I read something this week that doubt kills faith. I'm like, no, it doesn't. Doubt doesn't kill faith. The more questions you ask, listen, God's good. Jesus' story is amazing. You can ask whatever questions you want, and God will hear them all. And I think unbelief might eventually kill faith, but doubt, no. Because we have a great scriptural example in Thomas. He's like, Jesus, I don't believe you. Can I touch your hand? Oh, okay, I'm good now. But I'm not going to believe you unless I can just stick this finger through your hand, right? And that's okay. That's okay. So a few things we might add here is we have an offering box that not as many people use these days for paper giving, but we're going to double use it for money and questions. So you can throw questions in there if you want. Maybe an online thing as well. We're going to resurface our series on doubt. We're going to start a new series eventually in the coming months called You Ask. So ask a bunch of questions. We'll narrow it down to 3 or 4 and do a series on it. But here's what I want to get about this. We want to continue to be a generous and safe place while still being very much a Jesus-centered community. So what does that mean? It means that we want to be so open to whatever questions come our way. But we are a church, right? So we're not going to become anything else. We're not going to become a yoga studio. We're not going to become just a Q&A board. We are a church community that thinks it's really amazing to follow Jesus because he is the risen Savior. But it has to be a safe and generous space for people because people are coming from all different places and have a whole bunch of, hang-ups in their life for good reasons. And so it's no. Let's be a generous space. But we are a church, and Jesus is the center of that. Any thoughts on that one before I continue? Because we got to keep going. Yeah, that's a great question. If there's any denomination where there's space to be different, it's in an Anabaptist denomination, I feel. So I think in our setting, it is a generous space. So this comes from that too. I feel like we can ask way more questions. It doesn't mean that they're going to change their policy because of us, but they might be listen, if you're comfortable being with us, we're comfortable being with you. And I've seen that in our denomination, more so than most. But it's really nice to have an umbrella over you too, right? I don't think we should ever be solo. Right? I think too many churches split, too many relationships split because of divisiveness, where community is beautiful because you're I love everything about you but this. But it's enough, and I'm okay. That's enough to say, ciao, see you later, right? Yeah, is that helpful? Yeah, cool. Okay, really quickly on teaching and focus. We had so many diverse responses to this survey when it comes to teaching. One of them, maybe it was Matt, said, did you actually put yourself through this, Jonathan? You're the main teacher. It's feedback on you. You want to hear this stuff? I'm like, well, I'm open for it. So it was really great to hear it. It's normal to hear a variety of opinions on teaching, content, style. Why? Because we're so different. It's positive. It reminds us that any community is made up of a diverse group of people, and I love that. A few things that we're talking about are to add some variety to our teaching lineup. So in larger groups, in a larger church, you might see that through staff. But in our context, it comes through different things, like a trusted teacher friend that maybe we invite. Like we've invited some people over the years, like Chris or Natalie or different people like that. If we discern that someone in our church community does a good job teaching, so we're like, oh, let's see if they can teach. When we do interview Sundays, that gives us that space to do that. And it's also really good for you guys to get a break from me, right? It's true. You don't have to all say it out loud, but it's not a bad thing, right? So we've thought about that and looked at that and said, okay, how can we kind of add a bit more diversity to the teaching schedule? And I've also thought through this that maybe it would be a good idea to invite some people to kind of sit with me a couple times a year and kind of discern or discuss some future themes to teach on. So this way, people feel like we talked about it a little bit. And like out of that came like, oh yeah, that would be a good series. I wouldn't even have thought of that, and vice versa. So I think that's a good action point for that. So we'll come to an end, and then you can ask whatever question you want after, but I think the question is, what's our church community going to look like in the coming years? And so I love that we get to figure this out. This is just like kind of scratching the surface, of course. But I want us to be reminded that we are still a group of people that want to discover Jesus together and all that Jesus offers us. We are still a community that is community and serves community. That's really, really important. And then we still believe that God's story and people's story come together, and that we value God's story 100%. But boy, we got to value people's story, where they're at, where they're coming from, what their background is, how they got to this place in life, and just totally trust that between that just God's story and their story just comes together. And it's beautiful because sometimes it like meshes so easily, you just see this like, oh wow, yeah, that was always bound to happen. And then some you're like, wow, that was like a bit of waves crashing and some friction, but it's good because you see God's story and people's story coming together. So we still want to be a community of people who love God, love others, and live and work to make the world better, one ripple at a time. This is why, some of us have a stance of like not saying stuff necessarily publicly on social media and whatever, because we feel like, does that really do anything? But and sometimes it does, don't get me wrong, but I love the idea that we are grassroots, and the things we do like right here, like in this space, in your homes, in your neighborhoods, around a table, in conversation, loving somebody, hearing of a need, filling a need, that little ripple effect really makes the world better. And it's the way we love God and love people that will make a difference in the world for sure. So that's basically the stuff. That's it. There's no way we can go longer because I'd be thrown off the stage. There is no stage, but I'd be thrown out of the room. Any final questions, comments, disagreements? Go for it. It's just, what? Oh, wrap it up. Okay, bye. See you. I'm not even going to pray. God, thank you for this. Peace and love. We will talk more, but we trust you. Amen.